coming out of the recently held CARICOM Heads of Government. We want to take a look at that. And we're joined this morning by Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, His Excellency David Comissiong. Ambassador Comissiong, good morning.
Morning, Pearson.
What a good past few days we've had in Barbados for the CARICOM Heads of Government. We watched the opening ceremony, which in itself was riveting and impactful. And what do you think to be some of the takeaways from when the heads met and then they offered their communique?
It was a very successful meeting. You know, we had discussed it here, what to expect. Prime Minister Motley kind of laid out the mantra for the meeting in her opening address when she said it will not be business as usual, and that as things fall apart, CARICOM must hold the center. And so in looking at the outcomes, I would split it up into two halves. Mm-hmm. There was one half where CARICOM was outward looking, where in a world of increasing geopolitical instability and insecurity, we were looking outward to new partners and new partners who were looking at us as well as a region that respects international law, that is very mature, stable, and that indeed could hold a center. So we had guests like the Secretary General of the United Nations. For the very first time at a CARICOM Heads of Government Summit, we had the President of the European Union Commission. Then we had the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, the President of the African Export-Import Bank, President of the Latin American and Caribbean Development Bank. And so those engagements delivered quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can go into it, but those engagements centered around how we will be responding to the new this new world of seeming instability and insecurity, and the new partnerships that we will be building out. So that was one part of it. The second part was where CARICOM really then looked inward. Mm-hmm. And we looked towards our own fundamental business. So the things that we really focused upon at this meeting were crime and security, food security, the CSME, the building of the CSME, tourism, regional tourism, a regional approach towards educational reform and revamping our education system. And we took a look towards the governance and financing systems within CARICOM. So, and then we did things like have Martinique sign up as a new associate member of CARICOM. So all in all, a very satisfying meeting. We are at the stage where one should not look to a CARICOM Heads of Government conference for some silver bullet, some single great breakthrough that would change everything. I think we're past that stage. I think now CARICOM has a very comprehensive agenda, a comprehensive permanent agenda that it is working on. And CARICOM Heads of Government meetings are occasions when the heads come together to look at different critical aspects of that agenda and to make decisions that only they can make at the very highest level. Mm-hmm. So what you see is really a mature institution with a settled agenda and gradually and incrementally working through that agenda, implementing that agenda.
Part of that agenda, using your words, coming out of that meeting would have been crime and security. Mm-hmm. And I know Dr. Keith Rowley, outgoing Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, at the end of it made a comment. I want to play that, and I want to get your take thereafter. Let's take a look at Dr. Keith Rowley's comment on crime and security.
We spent a lot of time discussing, strategizing, and taking decisions on an issue which is common to all of us in CARICOM, and that is the unacceptably high level of violent crime. So we focused on the legislation, law enforcement, and the public health aspects. With respect to the legislation, we agreed that notwithstanding social considerations, we agreed that the changing nature of crime is such that acts of violence in the public space in certain instances must now be regarded as acts of terrorism. We're talking here about indiscriminate shooting in a public place where the perpetrators endanger all and sundry. In order to address that, we believe that the legislation needs to be cognizant of what exactly we are experiencing now as against what the existing legislation anticipated. And to that end, the heads sourced and obtained the services of a former AG of Belize, Godfrey Smith, who has been tasked to review our legislative templates and to come up with new legislative proposals for consideration by the heads for changes to be made on the legislative side to treat with what we are experiencing as against what we are surprised by. We also expect that these acts, using the tools of trade of the criminals at large in our communities, from Bahamas to Suriname, St. Lucia to Trinidad and Tobago, that they be deemed to be acts of terrorism and allow us to view them not only by the executive, but by our judiciary, and allow us to fashion the appropriate legislation to deal with that. So we adopted the working definition of crime and violence as a public health issue, since the effect on human conditions are such that violent crime, largely carried out by firearms, 80% of which of the killings that we're experiencing are done by firearms, and 90% of those firearms are coming to us from one particular source. So we agree that this is a public health issue, and of course we will continue to engage it as such.
Dr. Keith Rowley there, following the conclusion of the heads meeting here in Barbados, talking about crime and security and using the terms acts of terrorism. Mm-hmm. We'd not heard that kind of language before. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
What he is signaling a sense of urgency mm-hmm. that heads of government all across the community are feeling about the crime situation. You know, Barbadians have been disturbed by some fairly unprecedented criminal acts that we have seen in Barbados. But Barbadians need to be aware that it's not just Barbados. It is right across the region. And in fact, Barbados is perhaps one of the countries in which it is less prevalent. But they're really feeling the brunt of it in countries like, he mentioned a number of mm-hmm. countries, including
the state of emergency.
Trinidad and Tobago. So there are two things. What the heads have signaled is that there are going to be two approaches. One, there's going to be an approach where we deal with crime as a public health issue, where we really look at all of the socio-economic, psychological, mental health aspects of it, and we try to get to those root causes. But also, they're signaling that in relation to these very dangerous criminals who are capable of just, as we saw with a gas station here in Barbados, just indiscriminately shooting up and so forth, that they're going to be taking a hard line. So they have retained a former Attorney General of Belize, Mr. Godfrey, former judge as well, mm-hmm. and he will look at the drafting of new legislation to bring this hardline approach towards that element of criminals that are venturing into a realm of what could be considered terrorism. So you're gonna get a hardline approach towards them. But in addition, they have said that, the heads that is, have said that they're going to implement the Needham Points Declaration, which was a set of measures put together by the Caribbean Court of Justice. You know, the judiciary came together at Needham's Point in Barbados about a year and a half ago, and they came up with their own ideas as to how to respond to the crime situation. And then last year in Guyana, there was a meeting, there was a seminar, including heads of government and different experts, and they came up with the George Bridge Declaration. So at this heads of government meeting, a decision was made that all of our heads of government have embraced both the measures contained in the George Bridge Declaration and the measures contained in the Needham's Point Declaration, and they're going to be establishing, to put in place a high-level expert on criminal justice reform, and they're going to give that person a multidisciplinary team of experts to work with. So the idea is that all of the measures required to approach crime and violence as a public health issue, and all of the interventions required, they're going to roll out as a collective regional program. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the key issues that the heads addressed at this conference, and it was a key issue simply because this is one of the pressing, urgent issues that not just Barbados, but the entire Caribbean community has to deal with.
All right. Another one of those big meeting points, I think, was about food security. We know about the 25 by 25. We heard of an extension to 27 now.
2030.
2030, see?
Yes.
Even further down than I had first heard.
Yes.
But food security continues to be a part of the critical discussions by CARICOM to ensure that we can feed our people by ourselves. And so Dr. Irfan Ali, who leads that charge, the president of Guyana, he too made a comment following the heads of government meeting. Let's take a look at what he had to say about food security.
2024 would have seen major impact in the region as food prices for cereals, meat, dairy, vegetable oil, and raw sugar increased significantly on the global market. Of course, we import those increases, we import those inflation, and we have to manage within that context. However, 2025 is adding a lot of worry to the situation. The increased climate-related challenges, increased transportation and logistics costs, uncertainty in tariffs and rules, trade rules, would have a significant impact on the costs of food globally and here within our region. Just to give you an example, bird flu as we know it was first reported around March 2022. As I speak to you now, the current situation as a result of bird flu is alarming. There's a 20% decline in egg production from the US, and you would know that we source most of our hatching eggs out of the US. We source table eggs also. Many of the countries source table eggs out of the US. For a matter of fact, in some regions, when you look at the year-on-year increase in the cost of eggs since the first reported case of bird flu, it is 70% increase. When you look at egg prices as of January this year, in the US, there's a 15% increase in the prices of eggs. When you look at poultry meat, there is a 11% decline in production as I speak to you in the US. And as you know, the US occupy about close to 30% of global market share in terms of poultry meat. So we are discussing the impact of these challenges for the region, and important for us is to look at the full supply chain, to look at alternative supply routes, and to look at ways in which we can enhance and integrate our capacity and capability to withstand what could be a major shock in the global market.
Plainly there by Dr. Irfan Ali, President of Guyana, as he outlined for us where we stand literally as relates to food security and the challenges that are being faced by CARICOM. And as he was talking, I was asking what are the solutions, but he started then to hint at some of the possible solutions devised by CARICOM.
Well, you know, we could only play a short clip of what he said, but he did go on to point to the solutions that CARICOM is working on. But it's so, you know, we can't wish away difficult international realities. Those are the realities, those are the challenges that we have to face. What CARICOM has to do and what CARICOM is doing is organizing itself to respond in the best way possible to those challenges. And I would say, you know, to the credit of CARICOM and President Ali in particular, that the defense mechanism that we have set up in this area of agriculture and food security, I think is one of the best initiatives that CARICOM has ever taken. That is the 25 by 25. And to put it succinctly, what we have done, we have pulled all of our ministries of agriculture across the community, as well as our private sector, into a kind of food security network where they're working on increasing agricultural production, increasing the region's food security. And President Ali was able to report that between 2020, when we first started with the 25 by 25, and the end of October last year, we had in fact increased our regional food production by 24%, right? And he has put his own Guyana Ministry of Agriculture as a kind of secretariat of that regional project. And so he was able to report that a number of initiatives are actually on stream. For example, they're in the process of the development of a situation room and data center in Guyana that is, you know, looking at agriculture from a more scientific point of view and making sure that the data and the information to make decisions are all there. They're establishing a center of agricultural excellence in Guyana, a regional food hub, and a new platform to deliver agricultural support services all across the region. So these are things that are already in train, that are part of that 25 by 25 project. But he also went on to make the point that in recent days, they have met with the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, and they have developed 6 new projects that they'll be rolling out in cooperation with the Inter-American Institute. So just to make the point that the international challenges are there, we can't wish them away, but CARICOM has to organize itself to respond. And one of the areas that, as citizens of CARICOM, we can feel a sense of confidence is that we are organized to respond to the agriculture and food security challenge.
And so on that point, I have to leave it right there, Ambassador Comissiong. But good reports coming out of the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting recently held in Barbados. And I, again, thank you for engaging us in our conversations on CARICOM. We'll
probably have to have a second bite at it because there's so much more to report on the outcomes of this meeting.
Absolutely.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.